All right, today we're jumping into a guide with a title that is pretty hard to ignore: How to Game the Credit System Before It Collapses. Now, this is based on a piece called Reclaiming the Ledger, and it offers up, a really radical way of looking at personal debt. So what's going on that even makes a guide like this necessary? Well, it really all starts right here. We are looking at record high credit card debt in the United States. I mean, we're talking about a mind-boggling number that just keeps ticking up, and it's hitting millions and millions of households. For a lot of people, this is a financial reality that feels, pretty overwhelming. And that brings us to the big question that our source material really puts on the table. Is this giant mountain of debt a national crisis that we should all be panicking about? Or, and this is the twist, if you look at it from a completely different angle, could it actually be an opportunity? It's a wild thought, right? It suggests there's a totally different way to play this entire game. Okay, so to really get our heads around this perspective, we first have to dive into what the source calls the predatory debt trap. This is really the bedrock of its entire argument. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The core claim here is that all this consumer debt, it's not some accident. It's not a bug in the system. Instead, the argument is that it's an intentional feature, a carefully constructed design. You can almost picture it like a maze, you know? It's got a super tempting entrance, but the exit is almost impossible to find. It's a trap by design. So how does this so-called design actually work? It all comes down to something called the interest rate trap. And the mechanics are actually pretty simple, but they are incredibly powerful. Basically, the interest on your debt compounds so fast that your payments, they barely even scratch the surface of what you actually owe. So the debt either grows or it just sits there, creating this cycle that feels impossible to escape. And the source material, it does not hold back when it talks about the purpose of this trap. It makes this incredibly charged claim that this is, and I'm quoting directly from Reclaiming the Ledger, quote, a system designed to enslave the middle class. Yeah, a very, very strong and definitely controversial take on the whole function of modern credit. But look, the analysis doesn't just stop with the problem. It actually pivots to a solution, and it frames it as a Robin Hood strategy, basically a way to take from the system by using its own rules against it. So the whole thing really boils down to a huge shift in mindset. On one side, you've got the typical consumer, who sees debt as this terrible burden, a trap that just keeps you spinning your wheels. But on the other side, you have the strategist, and they see credit cards not as chains, but as tools, like stepping stones. The idea is to stop being a victim of the system and start being a player who uses its rules to their own advantage. So what's the number one weapon in this strategist's arsenal? Well, it is all about weaponizing the 0% annual percentage rate, or APR, offer. You know, that promotional tool we see in our mail all the time. Okay, so here's the playbook. It's a 3-step method. Step 1, you get a credit card with a nice, long 0% APR introductory offer. Step 2, you leverage it. You use that credit line not for a shopping spree, but as an interest-free loan to fund some kind of cash-flowing business or an investment. And then step 3, and this is absolutely the most important part, you use your returns to repay the entire balance before that crazy high interest rate kicks in. And it doesn't just stop with the 0% APR strategy. The guide also gets into some secondary tactics. This is where you play the points game like a pro. It's not just about earning points. It's about strategically squeezing every ounce of value out of them, knowing which cards give you the best return for certain purchases, and figuring out how to turn those points into the most cash equivalent value possible. It's really about extracting every last drop of value the system is willing to give up. So when you put all this together, what are we really looking at? Well, it's an approach that is very openly all about gaming the system. But what are the real-world results of playing this kind of game? And this lays out the two sides of that coin perfectly. The pros, you could potentially fund a whole business with zero interest or generate investment income using the bank's own money. But the cons, wow, they are huge. This takes an insane amount of discipline. One missed payment, one slip-up where you don't pay the balance off in time, and you could get hit with massive interest charges and do some serious damage to your credit score. It is absolutely a high-stakes strategy. Which brings us to our final question. When you look at this whole thing, is it a clever hack for navigating the modern economy? A legitimate way to get ahead? Or is it just an incredibly dangerous game to play, one that could lead to total financial disaster for anyone who isn't perfect in their execution? Honestly, the answer probably depends entirely on who's playing.